Good morning, everyone. I'm giving a few seconds for everyone to join and to hear us correctly. So welcome everyone to this new edition of the European Lighting Forum. This is now our fourth edition. If you've not been with us in the past, this is a new space that Lighting Europe created last year for members of the lighting value chain, but also interested stakeholders to share ideas, to share experience, and to work together to deliver better lighting in Europe. Today, we're gathered to discuss the topic of artificial light at night, impacts and solutions. And the colleagues that will have speaking today will dive into how to find the right balance between having the necessary light at night while at the same time addressing environmental impacts. So, on the screen, you should see the agenda. We'll start with a presentation from Peter Forns, who is the chair of our working group Value of Lighting, followed by a couple of presentations from Jasmine van der Pol from Lucy, who is a program manager, and Nicola Schale, who was editing the brief on light pollution mitigation measures for environmental protection. The session, the Q&A session will be moderated by my colleague Simon, and we'll conclude with some remarks from our Secretary General, Elena Scaroni. Before I turn to Peter and your presentation, let me just mention a few housekeeping rules. So please make sure that under no circumstances you exchange information on any competitive parameter. Please make sure your webcams and microphones are turned off, of course, with the exception of the speakers, so we can hear the presentation correctly. You can share your comments and questions in the Q&A box. Please note first that we will discuss all your questions once all the presentations are done. And we also ask you, please, to explain to whom your question is addressed to allow for discussion at the webinar. Please make sure that your name and surname are clearly shown in the we'll only prioritize questions from people that we can identify. Note that this webinar is recorded. You will get some of the slides and the recording webinar after this session is concluded, and you will have the opportunity to also share your feedback by clicking on the link you see on the slide when you receive the slide afterwards. But my colleague will also share with you a link in the chat box during this webinar. So please, if you can share your feedback, this is very helpful for us for future editions. Now, let's turn to our first speaker, Peter Forns, who is the chair of our working group Value of Lighting at Lighting Europe. Peter is an electrical and electronic engineer. He's also very involved in standardization work. On top of being a chair of Lighting Europe, he's also leading some activities in the lighting industry association that is based in the UK, also a member of Lighting Europe. So Peter, as always, we're very happy to welcome you today, and we turn to you for your presentation. Thank you again for agreeing to take the floor today.
Thank you. So, good morning, everybody. My talk is about it's light at night, yes, but it's about balance. And one of the things that we have, it's not working now, we have the idea that we have to gain a balance between what people need and what the environment needs. So humans need light at night. Ecology needs dark. And you can't really ignore one or the other. They're both very important. So you need the idea that it's got to be a partnership, not a rivalry. If it becomes a rivalry, then someone will lose. If it becomes a partnership, everybody will gain something, although compromises will have to be made. And you can see part of the problem in these photographs. You have one photograph, people are having fun, enjoying themselves. They have light. They're actually next to some water, so light is very good, so they don't fall in. The picture next to it, I actually took in some woods near where we live. And that also sort of explains part of the problem. Yes, it's nice and dark, but family and friends think I'm actually suicidal because I go in the woods in the dark. It's dangerous. Nothing's ever happened in those woods in living memory. But because it's dark, it's dangerous. So somehow we have to get the idea that both of these, people and ecology, can live together. Because people are used to light. Even if you go all the way back in history, people feel safe. So people now expect light. And somehow we have to accept that they need light. They need light for specific purposes at specific times, but we also have to somehow persuade people that the dark is not a dangerous place to be. And you can see some of the solutions we've had. They're old, they scatter light everywhere. If you look at the picture bottom right, you can see that that lighting is effectively lighting the houses, the cars, the roadway, and even the glass closest to us. It's putting light everywhere. So it is for people. If you come down the college, so light is for people. Have a 24-hour society. So whether we like it or not, lots of people work overnight, emergency services, making sure industries work all sorts of reasons. So we need lighting for transportation, keep people safe on the roads, on railways, airports. We need light in the workplaces to make sure that people are safe. If you look at that petrochemical works there, it would be a dangerous place without light. And actually, we actually have leisure time now, and it's really important, that we enjoy it with our family and friends. And we need light for safety. And you have to now think about the two different. Light to make you safe, but it will make you safe. Lighting will make a big difference. If you look, there's actually some from bottom left, but an image of some stuff, and they asked some females and some males to look at that, and they tracked where they looked. The males mainly looked where they were. The females mainly. You have to think not the white society, those who are all. It only about was look to where the next light was. Had light, effectively light and light impacts in navigation of species. So they navigate using magnetics, but also by moonlight. It'll impact. If you put light and you have bats, there are many bats actually quite happy in the light. It will help them feed, but their feeding pattern will change and they will eat different insects. Because if you look at moths, moths have some sort of radar system that lets them at very short range detect when there's a bat there. Works at night, doesn't work during the day, doesn't work under electric lighting. So bats can eat bigger prey. So they eat more bigger prey, less smaller prey. It changes the ecological balance. And it will change the availability of prey. It will change reproduction cycles. Reproduction cycles are based on the seasons and how things work. So if they don't see the change in the seasons and the change in the day length, it will start to have effects. It's changing the seasonal cues. And actually can leave animals and insects exposed to predation. When they're supposed to be roosting and nesting, they're still visible. So for the ecology, people need the night as well. If you look outside and you see the stars, you will understand why we suddenly thought we'd like to go to the moon. If you can't see the stars, you lose that one day. You lose that actual thing. if you can't see the wonderful sunrises and sunsets, you lose that sense of awe and wonder. You lose that peace. And actually, you lose a connection to nature, and we need to keep that. So people need night as well. You cannot light for one species. And if you disrupt any part of that food chain, you disrupt everything. It starts with plant life. There's photosynthesis. And the synthesis occurs at the blue and the ends of the spectrum. If you look at the insects, they have a large peak in the ultraviolet part, but they have a smaller peak in the green part. So you could go on with that, but effectively you can't just say, let's light for this animal. So in this example, you can bats can't see red light, but mammals, birds, amphibians, and some fish react to red light. So you can't light for bats. You have to light for all of ecology. There's a food chain. There is a complex ecological web. If you break one part, you break all of it. So it's not so simple to say, this is the answer, that is the answer. But actually, we are getting a lot better. If you look at the bottom picture and you think back to one of the start, I pointed out, you could see the houses, the cars, the road, the verges, everything. Modern lighting is much more controlled. So you can still see the cars, you can still see the road. Most of the rest of that picture is in darkness. That's how it should be. Much better. Down the road, you want to goes. You don't really need that light to go into the sky. So we can now think that we can have good quality, we can have thoughtful design. And this looks quite a complicated slide, but actually, if you look at it, it's saying we need good quality optics. It talks about improved optics, luminaire shielding, remove downward light. We need good installation. So if there are physical barriers, use them. We need lighting controls, so adaptive lighting, time schedules, all of these things. And actually, we need good design. Having just space isn't a good enough answer. We need to design, we need to think about how is the space used? What is it used for? Buildings don't get scared. Don't light the buildings, light it for who's in the space. So we're talking about good quality optics, good design, carefully installed, carefully controlled. And these things will make an enormous difference. So people need light, and we accept that. Ecology needs dark, and we accept that. We can actually do an awful lot just by designing better, using better products. And I'm sure everyone recognises these 4 principles, and they really come back to we need to use light carefully at the right time, in the right place. And actually, we need to understand that at times the right light is no light. If there is nobody there, what are you lighting for? So we have to get people to understand that if there is no light, it doesn't mean it's therefore dangerous. Let's be honest, if you turn the lights off at 2 o'clock in the morning, others are in bed as well. So think about what the light is for, think about why the light is for, and then think about when the light is needed. It might not be needed. But actually, there's another thing that we need. If you look right the way across Europe, and the European Commission and various people have produced good publications that tell you about some of the lighting requirements in these different countries. We have different requirements in different countries, and actually even within different states within different countries. This makes a really, really fragmented regulatory landscape. We need something that's harmonised. We need to rationalise these. Not only will it make design easier, both the products and installations, we can actually share good practice. So if something really works well, there's no reason why it should be used in one country. Why don't we all? So because there isn't by people that possible, we just have to do it with good design and with good product. If you want one last, if we turn the lights out, you don't call it Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter, for your presentation. So if you have already questions for Peter, feel free to drop them in to explain who your question is addressed to. And now we will turn to our next speaker, and I will turn to my colleague Simon, who will now take the lead for the second session.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Marion. And we are also very, very happy to have with us today Jasmin van der Poel, who sorry, there's a bit of an echo, who is a member of Lucy, the international network of cities focused on urban lighting. And in there she plays a key role in fostering knowledge exchange within the network, and she's very passionate about how light can transform cities. She started her journey into lighting during her master's in industrial design and engineering at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, where she already specialized in lighting. And now with more than 20 years of experience that she split between international lighting manufacturer and design agencies, she's now dedicating her expertise to helping cities connect, learn collectively about urban lighting, and shape better lighting policies. Jasmin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Simon, for this wonderful introduction. I'm first of all very happy to be here with you. And thank you also for Lighting Europe for having invited me. So I hope that you will all enjoy this presentation. I don't actually know if many of you in the audience, I see a huge list of 124 people, it's really amazing. How many of you know Lucy? I know some of you do. So I will combine this, or I will do some kind of general introduction, but also go a little bit more on detail on some projects that we are working on related to the story about the balance of lights and darkness. So I will share my screen now. I hope that will work.
Yes, it's
correct?
perfect.
Looks good.
Thank you.
It's really good. All right, then also need to click my screen on. Yeah, all good. Perfect. So yeah, we are Lucy Association, the international network of cities on urban lighting. And I will use this coming 15 minutes to talk a little bit about what we do. I think our work is really fascinating, and most of you already know probably why, because you all are lighting experts and working in the field of lighting. But we think our work really is very meaningful because it's a very incredibly big impact on cities and citizens. And as also Peter already said, it brings people together. It brings joy and there's a sense of belonging. And that's actually worldwide. And Lucy is a global network of cities. And we have cities, but we also have lighting professionals. I was very happy to have also Peter Thorns here because Thorn is a associated member of Lucy. And member, but also a supportive member because they're because of their size. And yeah, we are really needing all those associated members because yeah, Lucy is a network of cities, as I said, but it's actually really an ecosystem. So very happy to have all the universities, lighting experts, designers on board as well. And we share of creating sustainable environments of at night. So we really build the future of urban life together. So Lucy is the international meeting place for cities with international conferences and events. And maybe some of you knew, but 3 weeks ago we were all meeting. It was really amazing events, and we had in total 200 delegates, 23 countries represented, and 40 cities. And it was a 3-day event with a very high level of presenters, with the main topics inclusion, accessibility, well-being, and sustainability. So here again, like Peter said, yeah, there was a lot of words about also gender inclusion, making sure you create safe spaces for women, for girls. And there was a lot about feminism. So it was really a super interesting topic. And if you're interested, you can also check our website because there's a highlight article. So yeah, these events are moments where we share knowledge and where we discuss. But we also do things together, workshops, for example, and where we observe the different aspects of the night and we experience things together. So we learn from each other during these events, but we also have several working groups that allow us to go more in depth on certain topics. So we have working groups on topics like light pollution, lighting master plan, and we also have a very active one on cities in our networks have light festivals. So we have at least 20 light festival organizers amongst us, and yeah, they are very active and 3 times a year. So Lucy, knowledge center on urban publications, and we also have a magazine. And Lucy is a platform to build partnerships and projects. And Simon asked me to tell a little bit more about these projects. And yeah, enlighten me. It's one that we just successfully wrapped up in February. And I can tell you a little bit more about that one, maybe. It was an incredibly complex project, let's be honest. It was a project with 21 partners, then it becomes naturally complex. But what was actually the most challenging was that it was a combination of medical research and a sociologist, social research, and that was, of course, a real challenge. How do you actually get the it was, as I said, really challenging, but very ambitious because we wanted to assess actually the impact of lighting on health with evidence-based research leading to lighting policies and, of course, through new methods of co-design. I say of course, but it's not of course, but that was really one of the key missions of the project. Yeah, so that was all wrapped up in February. We actually came with some really good things. It was way more complex than we imagined, and yeah, not only for us. We had actually a really nice task in there. We operated in a kind of an advisory board. We also were involved in creating guidelines, and I will explain that a little bit later. But there's really some kind of key messages that we got out of this project, and you see there is a QR code here. It's leading to one of the videos, which is really truly amazing. So you can just I don't know if it's big enough to take a screenshot of it, but definitely check it out. For your work, really lights and well-being. So yes, it talks also about its sites that are part of this project, and very insightful also because they were really different parts of Europe, very different, let's say, very different insight. And it showed really how different people think about public space. And for example, it was very much about active aging and discovering that, for example, in Bologna, active aging meant something completely different than in Tartu, where in Bologna, for example, people said, well, as long as I can go out to my square and I can see my family or my friends there outside, that's for me active aging. And whereas in Tartu, active aging and help that to support that, to a very safe passage from A to B because they wanted to go safely to the supermarket or go for a walk because it's healthy. But they were not so much looking into the social contact. So it was very interesting. It was more even like I actually go out when there's not so this whole idea of what is active aging was researched, and yeah, I think just watch the movie. How social research led to those insights, and how it shows actually that lighting has a very big social dimension. All right, so as I said, Lucy coordinated this advisory board. This advisory board was launched to advise on the project deliverables and making them implementable. So as I said, a huge job was actually on these guidelines. So we co-wrote these guidelines, and it's actually now published with thousands of copies. So if you're interested in having them, then we can even send you one. But it really compiles all the insights of the project, and it was the first year in London. But now some of the feedback that we received from the advisory board of cities that was really helpful in shaping this document was, of course, all right. We insist this evidence design or this evidence-based research to get to make new policies. So we were actually, that was a feedback. We were actually waiting for more concrete know-how. There are no lux levels in these guidelines, and there's no luminance levels. So if you're looking for that, you might be a bit disappointed. But actually, it's actually a real good document when it comes to highlighting, as I said, this social dimension of lights, and it actually gives good guidelines to cities. It's not as much a technical document as well as a maybe more political document where you can really see how you can light and treat it as a more holistic thing. So yeah, I really invite you to check it out. There's the QR code again, so it will lead to the site where you can find it online digitally. It's the project site of Enlighten Me, and that site also shows the different videos that were produced. So yeah, we really enjoyed working on this project. It was very complex, but it really showed how important it is to look at lighting as a holistic thing, and also to set up multidisciplinary teams to create a common language, for example, between different teams in cities, and also to actually see lighting more, or the process of making lighting or installing light, more as a iterative process. So to make lighting adaptive, and not only like one thing that you install and then never come back to. So the work on the pilot sites clearly showed that people really feel that it's important for them that the city takes care about their space and about their life also this connection with the citizens. So we had an amazing speech of Dan Slater, who was one of the sociologists working on this project. And he said one thing that really that I thought was really, really interesting, because there was a whole discussion about how these insights can actually get implemented in cities, where, of course, in cities people do not, or the services do not always have a lot of time, and it's not always that easy, of course, for every city to do so much social research for all urban spaces. And yeah, of course, that's a very big advantage of a European project, because actually you get to test new models, new ways of working, and that's a very big advantage of doing those projects for cities. And he said, so Dan Slater said, okay, maybe you don't, maybe you cannot every time you design a new space do research, but at least know what you don't know. So it was kind of, well, so that was enlightened me. As I said, please check out the materials, really amazing, and can be inspiring for your work as well. I would like to go to another project, which is called The Art of Darkness. Peter Thorns highlighted the need of actually rethinking darkness, of understanding darkness, and this project is all about that. So Art of Darkness as a cultural heritage of urban landscape. It's a project that you're right. University of together, Lucer, Aulu, Aulu, and yeah, so one out of like this. Do you ask the question? Lucy, on dark, and why would I maybe as a lighting manufacturer work on darkness? Well, this project is born in the Nordics, where there's still a lot of darkness, and where people still have this very strong relationship with it. Copenhagen, for example, is one of the darkest cities I know. I lived there for 5 years, and I really realized that people, they're not afraid of the dark. So there's this, yeah, there's this special relationship still there, and we know, I mean, we hide and to fear, and yeah, so we believe this and its values. Better understand the values of its qualities and its simple. And the cities in our network today, they put over quantity for the future urban better understands these values of lighting. Actually, of I hope that was really one of the reasons to start up this project. Jobs actually started by people that worked with lighting. It was started by researchers, lighting designers. So very interesting, actually, that it really had that perspective. This project aims about darkness environments. The idea is to conduct pilot trials, like we did in Enlighten Me, across 5 European cities, with the goal to create an Art of Darkness piloting model that can then be replicated. And of course, also development, collaboration across sectors. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe I'm running a little bit short. Simon, please. Yeah, or can I still have some minutes?
got some time for the Q&A.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll say some things, but I wanted to bring you a little bit with me in this project. And that many of you are familiar with into us shifts, and you start to notice things distance and it's really that we realize that darkness doesn't necessarily still our sense. It's them. That is something in this project that if darkness wasn't something to fear, but something to darkness goes sustainability values of darkness. So it really highlights its potential as a resource for human ecological well-being. And yeah, there's of course a huge role that I can talk about, but yeah, it will be transdisciplinary, participatory, and integrative. And there's a lot of things that we're going to do there in these coming 3 years. It has a good funding and 5 pilot sites. And I have to go very quickly now. But yeah, there's 10 partners involved in the projects, 5 pilot sites across Europe to really show the different northern and southern, eastern, western regions. Not going to go into detail on the project itself, on the process itself, but as I said, it will be really about trying, experimenting, and then of course at the end trying to create a model out of it that can be implemented and tested in other cities. Good. So our role in this project will be communication and dissemination, but also spreading the impacts. So we are going to make a call for follower and replicator cities. So if you know cities in Europe that could be interested in this topic, please let them contact us. And the call will open in October. So now I'm there at the end. Please follow us, share and connect. And this code is leading to our LinkedIn page where you can follow the project and learn more about it. And anyway, I mean, this is really a space where we want to get experts, researchers, artists, and anyone interested in these initiatives together. And you can follow the project's process, but you can also learn, exchange, and inspire each other. So thank you very much for your attention, and of course, for your questions.
Yes, these projects to now out in our agenda, and I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, who is Nicola Scheel, who's a communications consultant specializing in sustainability. She's an ecologist and brings a solid grounding in environmental science to her communications work, which enables her to engage effectively with complex environmental topics. Her expertise includes identifying and liaising with subject matter experts, aligning scientific insights with her policy perspective, and crafting accessible and impactful messaging. She was also the editor on the Future Brief on light pollution mitigation measures for environmental protection. So we are very happy to have you here with us today, Nicola, and I hope that you can take the floor now.
Sure. Hi. I'm just going to share my screen because I'm guessing that's how we're going on this. That working at all for you guys?
Can't see something yet.
Okay. Perhaps you could just, and I move it along as we go.
Yes, if you give me 1 second, then we can take care.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you for introducing me. I worked on a light pollution brief which was released on behalf of DG Environment Service called Science for Environmental Policy, and it was I think it was like 28th brief that we'd had. So they're policy briefs for DG Environment in the EU about emerging environmental issues, and this is in November 2023, and I'm really pleased that since then there's been lots of attention paid to the problem of artificial lighting at night and the pollution that can cause. And so yes, this was something that we were requested to look at by DG Environment in the EU, and I worked up a proposal and an outline for the brief for them, working alongside a team. We were specifically interested in looking at how to mitigate the impacts of Alan to protect the environment. So to help sort of restore ecological balance in areas there was too much artificial lighting without much thought previously installed, and also to just look at some guidelines and best practice from across Europe and actually internationally as well, that could serve in lieu of there being any kind of Europe-wide guidelines and thresholds, could serve as a kind of guide for people that were looking at doing specific projects in specific locations. The other thing that we were also asked to look into was gaps in knowledge. So gaps in knowledge on monitoring, on recording light thresholds, on mitigation methods, particular habitats where we needed more information to help guide policy. So that's what we're doing. And today, I'm going to talk to you a bit today about brief itself. I'll find why we did that, what the problem is, and how it the mitigation, the different tools and came across. So the previous speakers, I believe that we're afraid of now, and that's a modern thing. You know, humans have been around. We haven't always had electric lights, so it is something that obviously we need artificial light at night to function in various ways in various situations. However, it is good for people to start to recognise that they can embrace darkness, and it isn't necessarily something to be scared of. It isn't always safer to have bright lights, and in fact we've probably all experienced walking out in the darkness and having some really glaring lights or badly too bright light means is your natural ability, potential hazard. You know, so if the light on that path you're walking along is poorly designed and poorly constructed, then that affects your ability to see. And perhaps when you walk off it, you're more likely to trip because you're night blind, you have night blindness. So it isn't always actually safer. There isn't necessarily, there is obviously a need when you're doing a function, if you're working in a port or there's lots of people in one location, or you're driving and so forth, you need to have some lighting. However, I think it has to be considered quite carefully, and the default shouldn't be that there's always lighting needed in all occasions for the whole of the time. So some people, this is a quote here from Kasia Emmen, and she's there talking about the impacts that excessive nighttime lighting that's poorly designed can have, not only on wildlife but also on human health. So I think this is again something that the previous speaker just touched upon, which was talking about some of the adverse impacts on, sort of melatonin and fatigue and stress, sort of from glaring light. We've all experienced it. I had a neighbour that got nervous about having people break into her garden, installed a big floodlight that kept triggering and going off, and it was really poorly directed, and it was lighting up into everyone's bedrooms on the houses opposite, and it was really intrusive and not very pleasant. And so I think we do have to think about the fact that lighting can cause detriments to humans and to wildlife, and that we should all start to think about this quite carefully. And with a growing population and lots of rapid increase in urbanisation, we've seen a huge increase in light pollution and a dwindling amount of dark spaces. If you could move on to the. Oh, sorry, and just before I go, this is the difficulty of not having control of myself, I guess. On the previous slide as well, there was a bird there. That's a Corey's shearwater fledgling, and it's one of the studies we featured within the brief was looking at the impact on migratory bird species and seabirds of lighting, especially in coastal cities and towns and villages. This was in Tenerife in the Canary Islands, and unfortunately when they're fledgling, if they get attracted back to shore by the light and they land on the ground, they can't take off again, and they're much more prone to predation. And so there was a project that was looking at investigating this and trying to figure out some ways of adjusting the lighting, perhaps when they're fledgling, having a curfew, having certain areas not lit. So there are things that can be done and adjustments that can be made. It just needs some careful thought on a case-by-case basis. It's not always going to work that you can have a one-size-fits-all across all habitats and areas, obviously. Other groups of species that migratory shore and land birds, and insects generally. It is this. The one thing we're looking at it, it with so many benefits to removing them completely, but to reducing the number of lights, thinking about putting lower intensity lighting in, LEDs, thinking about switching off at certain times. You'll say we're not generating oxide on emissions. So as we all try and move towards zero future within Europe and globally, ameliorate the impacts of climate change, then address is really key to that. And there's lots of excess wasted lights. The easy wins are basically retrofitting a sting some where yielding on them, and you change them over to being LEDs. Perhaps some are removed. Yeah, too much. There's lots of different retrofitting solutions too. 2023, but yeah, so November 2020 it was brought to us. Pollution 2000. Actually think much higher than that. So something to be aware of, and that was something that started these conversations, which I'm really pleased, having sort of had a look around leading up to preparing for this talk today, at what's going on. There are so many projects now going on across Europe and globally looking at this, that I really feel like there is some progress being made, which is really good news, that there's been so much response and uptake about it. If you could move on, that'd be great. Thank you. So this sort of reinforces that the message that I just talked about there that was raised by the Czech president in 2022, and that is that we're losing our dark spaces, and they are places to be sort of celebrated. I mean, we've all experienced, well, I hope everyone here has experienced the beauty of the night sky with no lighting, being able to see the Milky Way, being able to sort of walk around, and as somebody said, your senses are much more heightened. You hear things. I feel quite relaxed in the dark in nature, and it's a lovely experience actually. So it'd be really nice that everyone got to, that my children and my children's children all got to experience that one day. And what I'm concerned about is if we don't start to think about this carefully, that won't be the case. If we look here in the EU from 2015 through to 2021, there was a loss of around 5% of bases across Europe in only 6 years. And if that continues unabated, then you're going to not have any dark spaces left. And that's a shame. And it's going to have so many bad impacts on nature and human health that I think addressing this now and thinking about it is and it's an easy win, right? I mean, you switch off your lights, you close your curtains. Some of the solutions and some of the things we can do to lower light pollution in cities and in rural areas, it's quite easy. It's not always that difficult to do. If you could move on to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So one of the things that I should just probably say before we move on is that we've established there's no cohesive European-wide policy or regulatory framework when it comes to artificial light at night. When I was looking into this, and we were told to look at thresholds and to look at lighting design and sort of work out mitigation methods, I was looking around for something to guide me as a starting point, like a review article, like I normally do. And it was obvious there wasn't. There were definitely some countries that were leading the way and were looking at this much more carefully. And there were also some international organisations like that were looking at it. The Convention on Migratory Species had lots of really helpful information because migratory species are particularly vulnerable to the effects of artificial light at night. Australia, because it's got lots of marsupial species, they've got some really great policies in place to try and protect their night-dwelling species that are some of them which are very endangered. And they've got lots of turtles that breed on their shores. So again, turtles are very prone to being impacted by light in coastal areas. So one of those, so when we were looking at this, the reason we were looking at it was to try and sort of come up with some, in lieu of the data all being there, and some approaches that we could look at and some techniques and ways of approaching it, the problem of artificial light at night, in advance of having all of the data. Because we, in a perfect world, we'd have all of the data about all of the species and all their different ways that they've visualized and so forth. But that's going to take a long time, and we don't want to wait. So we have to sort of adopt the precautionary principle sometimes and sort of assume based on indicator species and based on knowledge that we have already, some best practices. And that's kind of what happens a lot with these kind of policy briefs where there's data lacking. The brief itself was a co-design process, which involved a number of partners. So it was my team that I was working with at UWE at the time, University of West of England. We were working Science for Environment Policy at that point. Pardon? Sorry? I don't know what that, did someone just say something?
That was just a background noise. I think you can continue. Sorry for this.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so there were lots of different partners involved. There was University of the West of England, who were running the service for Science for Environment Policy Service for DG Environment in the EU. And as part of that, we would write these policy briefs on different issues. And then also there was eChorus that had come on board since Brexit to help us with that service as a European partner. And we also had, obviously, our experts, Anika, who's fantastic, Anika Jagerbrand, who you've probably know, many of you have heard of and seen many of her publications. And we also had the policy officers at DG Environment and the lead on Science for Environmental Policy, Christina, at DG Environment. And so collaboratively, it was an iterative process to come up with the future brief. There'd been a brief written already about the impacts on taxa of artificial light at night on different taxa and different environments. So this was much more looking at the technical side and management strategies to mitigate against artificial light at night, which, as we're all aware of, we can't completely avoid. And so I wrote a detailed pitch, did a literature search, and then from there we do several rounds of drafts with and then take into consideration comments back from all of the policy officers and from Anika, and then end up with the final result, the brief that we deliver. And it's basically, that the brief itself for our service, we've had feedback on our briefs, and people that use them, they use them to inform their own decisions on what they're going to do locally, on policies, and local authorities use them, conservation societies use them, and I hope that it's also triggered the development of some projects. So within the process of feeding back to policy officers across DG Environment in the EU, because this was such a cross-cutting brief, it doesn't necessarily fall into one policy officer's remit. It did trigger some thinking and some workshops and some projects that were born out of that, which I'll talk about a little bit later on when we talk about impact of the brief. So that's always what we hope, really, that this is going to move things along and move us more towards helping address the problem and come up with some ideas and thoughts and approaches, and ultimately potentially lead to changes in policy in Europe. That was the process of the brief, which I know Lighting Europe, that was one of the things that they were keen to find out about, because I think you're currently creating your position. So I'm happy to answer off this chat any questions anyone has about co-designing a future brief or coming up with a policy brief in more detail, but I don't want to sort of bore all of them. If you could move on to the next slide, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I will do so in a second, but we also have to be a little bit behind schedule. So if you could maybe briefly summarize some of the main aspects of the brief, that'd be great.
Sure. So the what can be done to mitigate, the main things that out of this that we came up with really was that your first step should always be to think about whether or not you actually need the lighting at all. So the minimum amount of light that can be used, you should be taking consideration of what species are present. Someone mentioned bats before, and some bats are actually impacted by red light, but most species across the board, if you're looking at a general trend, is to try and avoid as little as you can, shield it, be precise, avoid lighting upwards and backwards just to where you need to, and if you can get a tunable LED and try and remove more of the blue and white light and have a more sort of yellow, amber or red kind of lighting. I realise red isn't always the most popular with people, but yellow or amber coloured is going to have less of an impact, generally speaking, on wildlife. And of course, in specific situations, you can tailor that. And then thinking about barriers. So if there's no barriers there, if you're on a coastal location or by a body of water, then they're particularly impacted, because those habitats have nothing to stop the light. So it can penetrate really deeply and go really far out to sea, and that can really impact wildlife. And so if people really situations and then the spill light out of buildings. So we're talking about outdoor lighting, but also indoor lighting needs to be thought about too. If you've got an office block and no one's there, have a timer on so the lights go off, have shutters that come down in the evening after sunset, or close the blinds if you're in your home so that the light isn't going out onto the street and impacting things. And that's it. I think I'm really pleased to say that that this was well received, and that I've seen a number of projects born out of this, which are currently ongoing, like Aquaplan, Plan B, and the Interreg North Sea Darker Sky project, which launched whilst we were in the process of doing this. So there's been lots of projects that came out when DG Environment were focusing on light pollution at that time. Thank you for listening to me and inviting me to talk.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and even while we are a little bit over time, I would still like to make a little bit take a little bit of a moment for our Q&A session, because we've got already quite the engaging conversation happening in the chat, but maybe some further questions might also be useful for everyone here. So a question to Yasmin. Lucy involves many big cities. Apologies, my chat just moved. Yes, but can you encourage lighting practices and can you go a little into detail how you define quality over quantity of light and how cities should follow that?
Yes, of course, that's it's not very easy to define quality, because that's also what all our projects and projects in show, that it's very dependent on different types of population that all have their own needs and needs. So there's a certain quality to one, is not a quality to the other. But what we say is that you need to think at 24. That's actually what we really try to push, and what also I think that we have selection. So it's not for all the world, but they really recognize that that you can do that you can even reduce the quantity of light when you look more closer at what the needs are of the different people in a certain area, and yeah, that it really has a very big impact finally on how people perceive their environments and feel good in their space. And still many cities, of course, wish to have this connection with their citizens and create good, attractive spaces, beloved by their own citizens, actually. So it's not an easy answer, and we, of course, we have very often not really opposition to the idea, but more like, yeah, but seriously, I mean, how? How? I have 5 minutes to make the cost. Which feels safe for residential areas where you don't need to make the neighborhoods, because of course it's more expensive, it's more time consuming, and but so yeah, of course there's a lot of things to overcome, and we cannot expect that all cities will be able to really study the environment and the different target groups and make these site-specific designs. Of course not. So, but you have to anyway think about it where it's really needed. And if you have a place, for example, that's very sensitive, if you have a high level of, or if it's yeah, an economic sensitive area, for example, or a deprived area, then you could do some more effort. So there, I think it's more the awareness that you create in cities, that there's a lot of things that you can look into.
Thank you so much.
I can say it like that.
Maybe as a question to actually all speakers, if you could just really keep it brief, but how does one really convince someone of the advantages of darkness? I saw already a little bit of a conversation in the chat that darkness has a bit of an image problem, but maybe I would like to just hear from all of you. What's in your opinion the best way? Maybe we could start with Peter, and then we move through the list of speakers.
Okay. I mean, a few years ago, I actually did a little exercise and I looked at newspaper headlines about darkness and places that had tried turning the lights out. And the headlines weren't good, including one place that actually crowdfunded to pay for the lighting to get turned on again. So people don't like the dark. Somehow we get past that, we actually have a bigger problem that younger people and children actually don't know what the dark is anymore. If you look at people my age, I remember looking at the stars and I know what it is. If you look at my children, unless I take them somewhere dark, they won't know what it is. So somehow we've got to start teaching the younger people the value. Otherwise, it will get totally lost. And I'm always intrigued about the idea we have an Earth hour, which is good. I'm quite happy about an Earth hour. Why don't we have a stars hour or something like that? And actually get people to suddenly see, because they're not going to drive 100 miles and go and see something. But if they could just walk in their garden, and I suspect from a council viewpoint, this is a nightmare, but turn the lights out and see the stars, what a difference that would make.
Very interesting.
That there are various initiatives among cities in our network that actually do that, which I think is a great idea. We have the Nuit Belle, for example, that started in Geneva, and that's also now spreading to France. I know that in cities in the Netherlands, Leiden, they also have nights. And it's great. You do share remote those kind of moments. We could
maybe have something to add.
So well, I mean, I'm thinking back to when there was so Earth Hour, by the way, is when they turn off all the lights, don't they? They have a curfew, and so you do get to see the night sky. Perhaps doing that on a more regular basis rather than just once a year would be nice. Because if you think back to COVID and the curfews that happened in cities, and one of the positive things that came out of that, right, was that our carbon dioxide emissions, our energy use all went down. People started to spend a lot more time out in nature, appreciating things. There was a lot less light pollution and general pollution. So although it wasn't born out of a great, event, what that showed to us is that we are capable of lowering our artificial light at night and to sort of doing things differently. And these transformative changes, they probably need to be led by policy and they need to be led by cities. Like I say, it's great that Lucy's there, demonstrating how fantastic it is to appreciate the night sky and to have these kind of positive initiatives like Lucy are conducting at the moment, looking at the beauty of the dark and what you can see in the dark and what you can appreciate, and celebrating the cultural history and heritage of that to reconnect society with darkness. I think that's great because it's a really positive thing. So there's the kind of like carrot and stick. The carrot is that sort of thing from Lucy, and then the stick is a little bit from regulatory and policies. So it's a bit of both. And I guess for everyone that's gathered here today that are lighting designers, you can all go out there and create your own set of regulations and that are more sustainable lighting. So sort of creating dimmable, tunable, lower light intensity and sort of lighting solutions that are considerate and more precise and more thought through, and have that for all of your members can do that, and then start pressing and advocating to policy to actually adopt these and to catch up with you. Basically, you start doing the good stuff and then policy has to catch up.
Thank you so much, Nicola. So yes, I've seen many comments and many reactions, many discussions also happening in the chat with our speakers also involved. So I'm very happy. But I'm also trying to be mindful of time. So if there is maybe just one last question that someone would like to pose in the chat, then please go ahead, because otherwise I will hand over the floor for concluding remarks.
Good
To our
morning,
Secretary General.
everyone. Thank you, Simon. Thank you all. Thanks a lot to all our speakers. It was amazing. Honestly, it was really, really interesting and inspiring for me. This idea that all of us lighting experts, lighting passionate, we should all become knights of dark light. Probably I love that, honestly. So I would like really to, thank all of you. A pat on your shoulder was a really great moment of sharing thoughts. And I'm really proud of what we have achieved today. Thanks a lot to the Lighting Europe staff and this webinar today. That's really the objective of our strategy, to transform Lighting Europe in a platform of discussion, discussion where we can all align on common goals related to light. And that's what happened today. I see a lot of alignment. Of course, we are not all the same. We do not have all exactly the same opinion, but we largely share the same goal. And thanks a lot to all of you. I would like to just, we have a very final slides, which is really the and the next steps of this forum. The Lighting Europe Forum, European Lighting Forum, is a series of webinars all over the years. Stay connected. There will be more in the future. If you have any other person who would like to be invited to this forum, please make sure this person gets office manager, events manager. Please make sure it was sharing. You will receive it via email. Again, all of you, Jasmine, Nicola, and Peter, and the colleagues of Lighting Europe, thank you all for this very good moment of sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.